Matt from Inspired Dance Supplies here. I just want to talk to you quickly about the different installation methods for the 2mm flooring which we recommend for doing tap on. Now, a lot of studios want to just place the flooring down with the double-sided tape and not go down the gluing route. I do recommend that you glue this floor down. It is the ideal way to install it. I've got some details just coming after this section of me talking here where I'll explain how you can do that. Now, if you would not like to glue it down, a couple of points to note. The flooring, being that it's a harder plastic, it is quite stiff and it doesn't always want to sit down really flat onto the floor. Some rolls can sit really nicely. Some rolls do tend to have a little bit of bumps in it. That's just the way it is with this kind of flooring. Now, the best way that you can flatten that out is heat. When it's cold and it's settled into its position that it wants to be in, it wants to stay in that rolled up state that it's been in the roll, and it does tend to want to sit up a little bit. Now, if we can get some heat into that floor, that will help it relax down onto the floor and settle down nice and flat. Now, just heating up the room in general may help. You may also want to consider leaving it out in the sun for a few hours first to give some heat in it. The other thing is, once you roll it down, you could try using a hairdryer to get some heat into any sections that might want to be sticking up. The other thing is to use an industrial heat gun. Any electrician would have this, and a lot of tradies would have one of these as well. And you can also pick them up from Bunnings relatively cheaply. They are pretty much an industrial hairdryer. You wouldn't use it on your hair because it'd catch on fire. And you'd need to be very, very careful not to put too much heat onto the flooring so that you melt it. But if you hold it from a decent distance away and be careful, maybe test on a small section, a small bit of offcut first to make sure you understand how much heat would actually damage the floor. So you're really careful not to do that, because they will if you get it really close and hold it on. But from a distance and moderately, it's not going to be a problem. And this will help the floor settle into its new position nice and flat on the floor and take away that memory that it has from being rolled up nice and tight in a roll, which is how they come. There isn't any way around that. But again, yeah, you could do it with a hairdryer as well. It's just going to take a lot longer, and giving it time to settle down into the floor. The other thing is the end of the roll, being that the diameter of that roll, it gets tighter as it gets packed onto that final piece of roll. So the very last bit of the roll tends to want to flick up a little bit as well. So putting that heat in there will help it settle down, and it just takes time for it to find its place flat on the floor. That is why we do recommend the gluing method, to really hold it down and make sure nothing sticks up. But if you don't want to go down that route, see how your roll comes out. If you do have any problems with it, then a bit of heat, giving some heat from the sun, or getting the heating on your aircon going to just get that room nice and warm. And the optimal one would be getting one of those heat guns on it. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you do get a lot of heat into it, it may expand a little bit. So once it cools back down to room temperature, it may contract a little bit. So if you're installing it when it's nice and warm, just keep in mind it may shrink slightly. It's going to be a small amount. I'm really not sure exactly if you would even notice the difference, but it is something to be aware of and just something to consider when you are heating and installing quickly. So, and then you can use the double-sided tape with that. So see if you can get away without using the glue. Yeah, have a look at the section that I've got just after this, where I'm going to talk you through two different methods of how you can install the glue. I just want to show you a couple of different ways that we can install our 2mm vinyl flooring. So this is used for tap. What happens is the hardness of this plastic, and because it is quite low density, it can sometimes not want to sit perfectly flat on the floor. Now, in warmer climates and with a lot of heat, that should help it sit down nice and flat. but particularly if it's cold, for a start it's good to try and heat that room up and let it settle and sit down flat in the floor. But sometimes it might still be a bit stubborn and have sections that want to stick up. So what we would normally do to install is we would have, like you would have seen in the other videos, our double-sided tape around the perimeter. So we would have that as well. But then there are two ways that we can glue the product down. So we have this Sikabond contact fix, which we would put on with a roller. It's a cheap $2, $3 roller, and our paint tray. And the other option, a little bit faster but a bit messier, is the same type of product in a spray. So I'm going to show you those two different ones right now. So we put some of our contact fix in here, and just like you would have seen in the other videos where we will have the flooring rolled up, we can now put the adhesive down here. I'm going to do it this way so I can show you the two versions. We'll put our adhesive on the roller like this, and we can just roll that down like this. And for a really good fix, you would actually do the underside here as well. But it's generally not enough, and just a bit there should be enough. Now, it usually needs a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, to go tacky. So you can touch it and test it to see, and it shouldn't feel wet, it should start to feel tacky. I won't give it that full amount of time right now, but once we put the floor down, we're going to put it down. We'll have our double-sided tape around the perimeter, and we'll start from the center and we push and work our way out towards the tape to ensure that you don't have any bubbles. And you can push this and flatten it out like this. Now, it's not going to stick down properly right now because I haven't given it time to tack off, but that's basically the process. Push out to really stretch it out to the outer ends of the vinyl to help it sit out nice and flat. The other way we can do it is with the spray. Now, the reason this is a bit messier is we can spray the same kind of product on the ground like this, and we can easily get it on the back too. And we give it time to tack off, and then the process is exactly the same. Smoothing it right out. Again, it's not going to work properly on this floor here because I don't have the double-sided tape to help hold it all down, and I'm not giving it time to tack off. But once we have done that, that will really hold the floor nice and down. Now, the problem with this is the spray does get into the air. It's not good to breathe in. You should do it with a respirator. It also gets all over your hands. It does clean off reasonably easily with a cleaner, which I can recommend. And I highly suggest, if you're going to use this, which might be a little bit faster, give it all a good clean down first afterwards, because everything gets really sticky, but this does do a good job at taking it all off. So you really want to go around and clean up any residue that's afterwards, and once that has set, you're good to go. My preferred would be using the roller, using this tin. It does work out a bit cheaper as well for the actual amount of glue that you get. It's going to give a stronger bond. The strongest bond is to do both sides and give it time to tack. But sometimes we would want to, after it's dried, you may want to, in a few years, take the floor back up, and it should come up reasonably well. It'll probably rip off sections of the plywood underneath, but I have found with this cleaner, which is the Simple Green cleaner from Bunnings, and I've got a few other options as well. With a bit of elbow grease, you can get it off. It's not a fun job, but it is doable. It might take a day of work with a couple of people to really get it off, but it does work, and you can get it off and reuse it. You may want to flip the floor on the other side, because this floor is a double-sided floor, so you can get a second life out of it. Again, might be a bit of work to clean it all up, but you can do that if you have the time and you want to save money. So there is my video on the gluing portion of the 2mm floor. I don't recommend this for the 5mm. It doesn't need it. It is a softer floor. It sits down flatter. It's also got more weight to it because it's got a heavier density. So it really, I find it really doesn't need it. The double-sided tape, as you would have seen in the other videos, is enough. But that's what I would highly suggest that you do for the 2mm floor. So there you have it. Those are my recommendations for the flooring. Of course, any questions at all, please ask me. Always happy to help. Over time, our recommendations will continually update and get better. So for the best advice I can give you, always best to send me a message and I can tell you the best way that's going to suit what you specifically require. Now, the other thing to consider is, or to remember, I suppose, is that this floor has two sides. It's got the black side and the grey side, so you can install it whichever way suits your studio, and you can decide at the time. Now, if you'll have a look in the video that I'm just showing now, you can see that this is not the tap floor, this is our thicker 5mm floor, but if you're rolling it to get this particular side down, you can just simply roll the roll out like this. But if you have a look in this other video here, you will see that because it won't roll out on the right side that we want to, what you need to do is pull the roll out from the top to get it most of the way over to the studio. And then if you put a long pole through the center of the roll, you can wheel the rest of the roll out, and that allows you to roll it out on the opposite side. If you roll it over on one side and then try to flip it over afterwards, it is just a bit of a challenge to do that because the rolls are quite heavy. So I suggest rolling it out on the side that you would like to install your floor. Again, any questions at all, please always send me an email or a message on the Facebook page, and happy to help. Have fun.